Hey guys, it's Danny. Today it is the last day of October and I think we all know what this means. It is time to recap the orchids we had in bloom for the month of October. And PS, yes, I know it's Halloween. This is not a Halloween special. I did make one of those. So if you missed it, I'll link you down below to that video. It is a sort of a recap of some of my favorite orchids which just happen to have the colors of Halloween. So if you'd like to see that video, you have it in the description. But today, we're just going to recap whatever was in bloom this month. And let's just start out with the novelty. So first off, this is the wonderful Encyclia vitellina. It is a species which is very popular in the orchid hobby. I just had some bad luck with my previous vitellina. I think it had a virus. This is a new one. I purchased it last year from Orchid Garden in Poland, and this is the very first time this orchid blooms for me, and I think ever in her life. If I look at the plant, I actually do not see remnants of any flower spikes. I do have a sheath here, but it appears it never bloomed. And the other pseudobulbs are way too tiny to be blooming size. So this is the very first flower this orchid produces. Really exciting, and oh my, what beautiful flower it produced. So I'll scoot you in closer so we can see the details. Yes, this is a pure pumpkin orange orchid. The color that you see on the screen is not improved by me in my editing software in any way. In real life, it really is this strong and vivid. And that's a real bonus because the flowers are really not big. I would say maybe 2 centimeters maximum in diameter. This is not a big flowered orchid, as you can see, but the color absolutely makes up for it. What I love most is the contrast with the lip. If you can see, we have a gradient effect on the lip. It starts out a vivid yellow and then it fades into orange towards the edge of the lip. But with the overall sepals and petals, it creates a wonderful contrast. Now, I will talk more about this orchid in a future video. I will also share with you a few care tips, so stay tuned for that video. But to sum it all up, beautiful orange, vivid colored orchid, no fragrance sadly, but absolutely fantastic little orchid, little miniature that is well suited in home conditions. Next up, we have a Cattleya orchid, which you might have already seen in previous videos. She is still in bloom. It's almost been a month. This is the Cattleya Jungle Eyes, and I already have this one for about 2 years or 2 years and a half. This is the second time it blooms for me, but this time the flower is a little better, it lasted longer, and the fragrance is better as well. So as you can see, the flower is not huge, but it is very waxy, very sturdy, and the colors are vivid once again. The background is a golden yellow spotted with maroon burgundy dots, which have a different pattern from the back. So the pattern on the front is not the same as the one on the back, which is very interesting. The lip is a really deep magenta. It is quite broad, as you can see. Fragrance-wise, it really reminds me yet again of Brassavola fragrances, which I can describe as soapy or perfumey to some extent. But when I say soapy, I really do mean it in a good way, a luxury soap, if you will. Only this one smells during daytime, unlike Brassavolas, which smell during nighttime. This is a Cattleya hybrid, and I really do like that species. I do not own the species, but one day I will purchase it, and it's just such a good hybrid. It grows really fast. It's easy to grow. If you want to take a look at the whole orchid, I think I presented more in my initial video on this orchid. It is yet again a miniature or medium-sized Cattleya. When I say miniature, I keep in mind the very large Cattleyas, which can get up to 50 centimeters in height. So compared to those, she really is a miniature, but you can obviously go smaller than this, particularly with Sophronitis hybrids or even the species. As the name suggests, I do find this orchid very jungly, very wild due to this dotted pattern, which reminds me a little bit of a leopard. And of course, it has those warm golden colors that I really like on orchids. It really is one of my favorites. It just doesn't bloom all that often, but when it does, it puts on a really great show. Next up, we have the Brassavola Little Stars. This one is a faithful bloomer. She always blooms very nice for me year after year. I think this is the 3rd year when she blooms. However, this year in comparison to other years, the flower display might not be so impressive. I have 2 flower spikes, and I do have another one in the back that is just forming. This is the one that fell last summer, if you remember, and I managed to break one of the new growths, which started to grow another very tiny new growth, with a very tiny flower spike. And I'll get you in closer so you can see there's a little bit of a mutation there. I have the same thing happening on another new growth. Pretty much she did not handle that fall very well. I just thought it was more aesthetical damage, but no. One new growth completely broke off and another one or two bended to the point of actually withering off later. So it had to produce another set of new growths. I had to repot her because the pot broke. She spent a lot of energy on the existing new growths and the flower spikes, and then the new growths, the second set of new growths this year, and also adjusting to everything, making up for lost roots. You know, it was a hard time for this orchid this summer, sadly, but she did manage to bloom, and I'm very happy for this. She's a very fragrant orchid during nighttime, smells a little soapy as I was saying, but I personally do enjoy Brassavola scents. From all the Brassavolas I ever had, I don't dislike, but this is my least favorite scent. It is a little bit too powdery for me. My absolute favorite is the Cucullata on the other hand, which is a more clean scent, but you know, I do really enjoy the scent of this one as well. History-wise, she has been mounted for the longest time. I purchased her mounted, and then when we came here, I potted her up. She just bounced back like nothing happened. She's a very vigorous orchid, vigorous hybrid, so I do recommend her if you're thinking of trying out Brassavolas. So this has been the Brassavola Little Stars, which you might already know, faithful bloomer. I just love her, and I hope next year we'll have a better display. Moving on to another faithful bloomer, this is the Cycnoches Wine Delight. And yet again, I do have this orchid for a few years. I think this is the third or the fourth year when it blooms for me, considering the first year when I purchased it as well. For those of you who are older on this channel, you already know this guy. I always recommend this one if you want to start to grow Catasetum type orchids. Definitely start with the Cycnoches Wine Delight. It is a very vigorous hybrid that is super rewarding flower-wise as well. This year we have 2 flower spikes, but I did have a year in which I had 3 flower spikes as well, so he is very prolific flowering wise as well. Like most Catasetums, it is not a small plant though, so you do need to allocate quite a lot of space for this guy, but I think is well worth it. Now the flowers are a very nice deep burgundy color. They are waxy, particularly the lip. They are not tiny, so they really put on a great show, and they're very fragrant. My entire greenhouse right now smells like this guy. Fragrance wise, I personally love it, but I can see how some people might not like it. It is the type of fragrance which makes a statement, so you either love it or hate it, I suppose. To me, it smells kind of like a pharmacy, but in the good way. It is a medicinal type of fragrance, maybe cough syrup, maybe something with vitamins. Really hard to describe, but it is powerful. So yet again, you'll find additional links with this guy and maybe a care tutorial as well in the description down below. It is the season of Catasetum blooms, and we do have 2 more Catasetums that are preparing flower spikes, so you'll see more Catasetums probably in November as well. But as always, the Wine Delight is the very first one to bloom. Next up, we have another older orchid, but this one skipped blooming last year. This is the Dendrobium Velvet Melody. Commercial-wise, I think the name for it is Taiwan Black, although I'm not entirely sure we are talking about the same orchid. There are quite a few very dark purple dendrobiums on the market, and this one I received as a very young plant, almost a seedling, from a friend. This year, though, is the very first time when it produces 4 flowers. The cane is larger than the previous canes. As you can see, it has bigger and bigger canes, so it did have quite a nice evolution apart from last year when we moved here. And this year it has a really gorgeous display. Now on camera it looks kind of burgundy. It's not like that in real life. The camera just has some issues capturing this orchid's true colors. It is deep, yes, very dark, but a little bit more purple than what you see on camera. So the redness that you see, it's not there. It's rather purple in real life, but nonetheless it is a striking flower. It is very velvety, and if you look inside the lip, you can see it has a little texture, hairy-like texture, which is the darkest portion of the plant. It is almost completely black. If you don't look at it in the sun, you can swear it's black. It is absolutely beautiful, and the flowers are not tiny. They are a medium size, so bigger than the Bijibum hybrid that we had this year, but it doesn't really have a fragrance. Dendrobium Phalaenopsis types or Bijibum types are not known to have fragrances, but they do really put on a great show, and they are really easy to care for. If you do have bright light, warm temperatures, they are warm growing plants, and they absolutely love water. Soon I will make a sort of basic care at least tutorial for Dendrobium Phalaenopsis orchids as well. I didn't have many of them throughout the years. It is only in the past 2 years that I gathered more experience with them, so at least a basic tutorial I can make for you guys. So let me know down below if you're interested in it. We also still have the Phalaenopsis bellina in bloom. This is a sequential bloomer, and it is the last one of my summer blooming Phalaenopsis to still have flowers. And she does have one more bud at least on the way, but I think I see another bud forming there. She is an absolutely gorgeous orchid with such a beautiful fragrance. She was in bloom last month as well, but this is a new bloom. That bloom faded away. This is a new bloom, and we will have another one pretty soon. The bellina is a really iconic orchid, very popular, and if you enjoyed the summer blooming Phalaenopsis, you would like a few species, the bellina is the way to go together with the Violacea in my opinion. They are very fragrant. The flowers are just so beautifully colored, as you can see. Just don't expect the usual cascade of flowers that the complex hybrids display. These guys only produce a few flowers at a time, 1 flower, 2 flowers, but they do bloom from the very same flower spike for a few years, provided you care for them properly. So don't cut the flower spike if it's still green. Other than that though, they're just as easy to care for, just a little bit slower in my opinion than the complex hybrids, so don't expect 5 leaves per year or something. Other than that though, they are pretty easy to grow. And the last orchid we're gonna feature today is the Dendrobium Purple Happiness that I purchased last year, you might remember, from IKEA. Finally it bloomed, and what a wonderful display once again. So the Purple Happiness is actually a commercial name. I didn't really find out the proper name of this orchid since it looks very similar to many other Dendrobium Phalaenopsis that are purple. If you do, however, know the name, yeah, just let us know down below in the comments. But commercially, you can find it under the name of the Blue Happiness. So this is your typical Dendrobium Bijibum type or Phalaenopsis type hybrid. It grows pretty large, but it does produce a really nice and showy flower spike. Mine currently has 9 flowers, but it can go a little bit more than this or a little bit less than this. I consider the display to be pretty standard. So this orchid is completely adjusted to its environment and to its pot. It's really liking semi-hydro actually. Yet again, not a fragrant orchid. These types of orchids are not necessarily known for their beautiful fragrance. However, though, the color is really rich. It is not as intense or as dark as the previous Dendrobium, but it is indeed really pretty. So these have been the orchids that rebloomed or bloomed for the very first time in my care, but we also had some novelties, some new additions this month, which I'm very excited about. Currently they don't really have blooms, they faded really fast, but I did film them, so let's just go through them really fast. First of all, my pride and joy, the Oncidopsis Francine. Yes, she is not a Nelly Eiler. Color-wise, absolutely different. She's not red, she's a more pink type of orchid, but it's a really lovely sweet pink, and fragrance-wise, she smells like a mix of the Nelly Eiler and a Miltoniopsis actually, so not so chemically as some people usually describe the scent of the Nelly Eiler. Second, we have the Miltonia Sunset, yet again an easy grower. I did have her in the past and I lost her, and finally this year I managed to obtain a good individual, hopefully. Mine is not fragrant at the moment, but if you want to know more about this orchid, just check the description down below. We also have a NoID Miltonia hybrid, and this is how I'm gonna specify it in the description down below if you want to vote for it. We know which one it is, the NoID Miltonia hybrid. So yeah, I wasn't able to identify it just yet. It is very similar to the Sunset, it's just lacking the purple, also it has a little bit smaller, and also the yellow color is different. As one of you guys put it, it's a banana yellow type of color, and I couldn't have said it better myself. Next we have another Miltonia, which I'm missing the name, but you will have it in the description or on the screen. I purchased it this month from Cattleya too, and it still had some flowers. Yet again, it's a hybrid, it's not a pure species, but it is very, very close to the species. Maybe it's a primary hybrid introduced newly on the market. Next we have the Aliceara, if I'm not mistaken, that's the new name, Tahitian dancer, which I didn't film much, but there you go, I purchased it. I went back to the flower shop and I purchased it. Currently does not have flowers. These orchids were not necessarily super fresh to begin with, but that's okay. And I also got the Brassia Toscane, and also last one is the Oncidopsis Bartley Schwarz, the white variety. It's a really, really popular orchid here in Europe, so I love the Bartley Schwarz. They're easy to care for, smell like candy in my opinion, so what's not to like about them? P.S. I forgot to mention, don't forget to vote for your favorites this month. There are only 2 more months to go, and at the end of the year we're gonna decide which one was the orchid of the year. So in a comment down below, just let me know which orchid was your favorite. Only one, sadly, out of everything. And that's about it with the orchids that we had in bloom in October. There are a few more, but they're not fully open, such as that Vanda. You see, it still has a bud, so this one will be featured in November, when hopefully we're gonna feature some stuff that have never bloomed before for me. I'm so excited about these, but I don't know how long the flower spikes take to develop, so maybe not in November, but maybe in December I'll show you some really, really nice novelties, some orchids that we did see quite a bit in videos, but they never bloomed. Anyway, we'll talk more about it when they bloom. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always, you have the names of all of these orchids in the description in order of appearance if you want to copy paste it, Google them, find out more about them, or order them. So you know the drill. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchids and plants videos. Actually, not plants, only orchids, because I have a second channel. If you missed it, it's called MissOrchidGirl. I am so full of ideas, aren't I? And already I have a second video on that channel which deals with planting bulbs, freesias and sparaxis. So if you missed it somehow, yeah, you have everything down in the description, up for you to click on whatever you feel like clicking on. Alrighty guys, with this said, I'll see you all next time. Bye!